Good morning, everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
Morning, ma'am.
Welcome to the fourth day of your induction. And since we are starting the academic year 21-22, our HOD, Dr. Geetali ma'am, she would like to address you all. So I'll just share the screen and please be there in the meeting. Don't leave the meeting as of yet, because after the address, our next speaker will join immediately for the session.
Good morning. It is a matter of pride and immense pleasure that destiny has given me the opportunity to be a part of Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapeeth family as a dean. I take this opportunity to welcome our students who have chosen Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapeeth for their higher education in various programs. Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapeeth Pune is one of the heritage institutes. We have 100 years of legacy in dedicated service in the field of education. The Vidyapeeth is incessantly progressing into a dynamic future with enthusiasm and zeal. Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapeeth was established in 1921 immediately after the demise of Lokmanya Balagangadhar Tilak by his ardent follower Mahatma Gandhi, who mooted the idea of establishing a university in an educational memorial of Lokmanya Balagangadhar Tilak, the father of Indian unrest and an advocate of national education. In his fourfold program, other than the Swarajya, Swadeshi, and boycott. Since inception, Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapeeth has the prime objective of imparting national education to improve the teaching techniques as well as support research activities in various fields and also to focus on non-conventional educational aids. 1.5 years into the COVID 19 pandemic, close to half the world's students are still affected by partial or full education institution closures, and over 100 million additional children will fall below the minimum proficiency level in reading as a result of the health crisis, according to UNESCO. Thus, the current situation has compelled us to look at the education with a new perspective. We are compelled to accept the power of digital, where innovation and creativity take the front seat. Even the key stakeholders in the education systems have to begin to introspect. This is not less than any other revolution with a cutting edge advantage. These are the times of tremendous opportunities to relook, rebuild, innovate, and reconcile the education for the 21st century. These are also times with opportunities to relook at the methods of teaching, sharing, and disseminating education. Often, abilities like critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, imagination, agility, adaptability, and collaboration are not tested completely in the paper based examination. These are required for the students' personal growth and are helpful in developing entrepreneurship or employment acumen with the student. The graduating student must have excellent knowledge and skill in the area of his study. However, he must also have a broad understanding of society and relationships. Character needs to be nurtured as an essential quality by which he would understand and fulfill his responsibility as a citizen and a human being. Besides the above, several meta skills and underlying values are needed. But then, how do we evaluate learning? How do we measure the impact of a given curriculum? Formative assessments with projects and solution based outcomes are an effective day to day assessment technique that are often done throughout the year in order to evaluate the students' learning with an appropriate feedback from time to time. Hence, we have decided to have class tests every month, and those marks will be counted for internals. We will be having a short feedback of students to know about the faculties and every semester about the institution in general, as in the admission process, non-teaching staff, canteens, libraries, etc. Also, we have kept marks for NSS activities or any other national sports activities you have participated in. Also, lecture plans, syllabus, question bank will be shared with all of you. Academic calendar will be shared with you. As you meet with your new mentors to talk about your interests and aspirations and to select the optional subject you will take this year. I encourage you to go forth in the spirit of exploration and adventure. Try new things, choose proactive classes, and expose you to new ideas, alternative ways of thinking. The faculties and the coordinators year wise are the faculties and the coordinators year wise, I'll just brief them to you. And then if you have any queries regarding your curriculum or any other assignment, you can be in touch with them. So for the third year, fifth semester, you have three common subjects, that is media marketing, research techniques and soft skills. The media marketing will be handled by Shashwati Shweta. The research techniques will be handled by Kshitija Tilak and soft skills will be handled by Bharti Motwani. We will be having these common lectures on Monday and Friday. The timetable for the same will be shared shortly with you. For the BHMC batch second year, that is third semester, we have four subjects: media management and event management, which will be handled by Shashwati Shweta; editing for media, which will be handled by your respective specialization faculties, and Shashwati Shweta will be coordinating for it. Then we have development communication and fieldwork, which will be handled by Sukhada Khandagade, and media psychology, which will be taught by Kshitija Tilak. We will be having this common lectures on Wednesday and Thursdays. Again, the timetable will be shared with you. For the master's second year, third semester, we have photojournalism, media planning and web marketing, advertising and public relations, national and international news, broadcast journalism, entrepreneurship development and endological studies. The Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapeeth student, master level students can contact Debhavati Chakravarti for their faculty members, and they can be in touch with her for the other assignments and lecture related issues. For ad and PR specialization, you have copywriting and advertising for print, writing and advertising production, TV, radio and internet, advertising appeals, glamour of advertising and role of PR and PR tools. So all these I am briefing you regarding this subjects, as you will be having them for this current semesters. And I know that there are a lot of problems which you had in the last semesters due to the COVID situation, but now we have kept 3 days open for the students to come over to the Vidyapeeth or Seamless Education and do their practicals. For that, make a point that you have your 2 vaccinations done, get your certificates along with you so you can produce it before doing any practicals, and make it a point that you wear your iCards all throughout the day when you are at the campus. And I'm sure that surely will meet in the next semester for all your offline lectures. Now I'll let you know about the rules and regulations which you need to follow in the campus. So as I mentioned, all the students have to carry their iCards of Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapeeth when they are in campus. Smoking and consumption of alcohol and drugs is strictly prohibited at the campus. Though we are going with the blended method of both offline and online lectures, the students should be logged in 10 minutes prior to the class, or if it's an offline lecture, you should be seated in the classroom 10 minutes prior. Students should be neatly dressed and no short clothes are allowed in the campus. Students violating dress code must not be allowed to attend the lectures, laboratories or the library. Cleanliness and hygiene need to be maintained in the campus, and also waste should be disposed in the dustbins. Also, disposing sanitary napkins properly is expected from the students. Staff members must take attendance within the starting of the first 5 minutes of the period, and latecomers should not be denied but the admission to the classes for being late. However, such students need not be given their attendance. There will be a parent-teachers meeting at the end of each semester. Regarding exams, late submission of forms, fees will not be accepted and students are required to take the proper note and cognizance for the same. All the messages regarding the admissions, fees, exams, deadlines of submissions are informed to the students from time to time. So I won't accept any applications other than any emergency cases regarding the exams. Even for Viva, students are informed well in advance, and I won't listen to any complaints saying that they are outside busy shopping or doing any other household chores. No such excuses will be entertained this year. The internal Viva schedule, which will be informed in advance to the students, and no reschedule for the exams of the Viva will be done. So it is necessary to be attentive in the class and no reminders will be given to the students. Admission needs to be taken every year, so only till September end students will be allowed to attend the classes. Till then 50% of the fee and form need to be filled. We are appointing a counselor in the Vidyapeeth for the students. So if anyone needs any help, kindly contact the department. Also, we have committees like anti-ragging, anti-discrimination, harassment cell, etc. for student support. So kindly contact the department if you have any complaint regarding the same. Then facilities like library, gym, indoor sports, recreation activities, canteen, free legal aid service, OPD center at physiotherapy and nursing, then media center, seminar hall, auditorium are made available to the students. If you have any serious problems regarding the staff or any other students or any other academic difficulties, extra lectures, remedial lectures, kindly contact me at masscomhod@gmail.com. I am sure that you will feel proud on being associated with us and make us equally proud with your academic excellence. Now we have with us Keval J Kumar, who is the founder director of the Resource Center for Media Education and Research, RECMER, Pune. He has published widely in academic journals and also in the number of edited books on the discipline of communication. I am sure you will make best out of his lecture. Good luck and all the best. Thank you.
Hello. I hope you all must have listened to the address and you've noted everything down. Just give me a minute.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, fine. Good morning to all the professors and students of TMB. Good morning to you. Namaste to everyone. I'm delighted to be with you this morning, though I must say the news from Pune is not very good. I would have loved to meet you in a physical classroom, but it's not. I think it's not going to be possible for the next few months because the news from Pune is that the number of cases is going up, and so we have to take care and play safe. Yeah, I would like to just touch on three issues during this half hour or 40-minute session. I will leave at least 10-15 minutes for questions. In the first place, I would like to look at the nature of the media and entertainment business. How is it different from other businesses, say like manufacturing, services, agriculture, education, and so on? Okay. And secondly, I would touch on some skills that are required in this profession. Some skills, maybe 4 or 5 skills, which are really required for this session. Then finally, I will give a few tips on how to study journalism and mass communication. I know it's a very popular subject, but it is, I would say, very very distinct and very different from other subjects, like the natural sciences, the social sciences, the humanities, and so on. So to kick off, I would say that the media and entertainment business is profit-oriented, is market-oriented, and it, by and large, depends upon advertising for its major share of revenue. For instance, print media and the television, electronic media, both rely for their major share of revenues, not from subscription, but from advertising. Now the question is, how does this affect the content, both in terms of news, information content, and entertainment, reality shows, soap operas, situation comedies, and so on. Okay, and you would find that the influence of advertising, the need for advertising revenues, influences both the news content and the entertainment content. How do we know that? Have we done the research on that? Of course, there has been plenty of research done on this area. And let me give you an example. Look at the news, the prime time news shows every evening on our television channels. We have over 400 news channels. I don't think any other country in the world has so many. But that's because we speak so many languages, and we are such a huge country and a huge population. If you watch these primetime news shows every evening, evening after evening, you will find that they're becoming more and more studio-based, more and more involved in debates and discussions, rather than in providing news from the field by reporters. That segment is very short, but much of the time of these news shows is taken up by debates and discussions. And often you can distinguish the serious channels from the non-serious channels, entertainment-oriented channels, by the amount of time given to news from the field. Now, this business, of course, is very unique. It is not the same as manufacturing soap or soft drinks or whatever. It is unique and special because it's a public resource. It's a public good. What I mean by that? It means it has to serve the information and entertainment needs of the population with a certain sense of social responsibility, with a certain amount of ethics. In other words, avoiding sensationalism, avoiding rumors, fake news, paid news, misinformation. All this pollutes our democracy. So the media are special because they have a big role to play in a democracy. And what is that role? That role is to build an educated citizenry. Citizens who speak up, citizens who participate in the debates in a democracy, especially in civil society, in parliament, and elsewhere. Okay? This is a great burden for the news business and the entertainment business, but primarily I would say the news business. And that is why the news media, whether online or offline, whether on apps or platforms, they all are given special privileges. The news media are described as the watchdog of a democracy, the fourth estate of a democracy. This means that news media, whether online or offline, have to take their job seriously. They cannot play around with news media in the same way they can play around with the entertainment media. Supreme Court Justice Chandrachud recently called upon the citizens, especially educated citizens, to expose the lies of the state. So it's not just the responsibility of journalists, it's also the responsibility of educated citizenry. In other words, the media must facilitate participation by citizens, every citizen, in the debates and discussions that take place in a democracy on a daily basis. We have daily newspapers, and we have weekly magazines, and then we have online news all the day through. Yeah. This responsibility, I think, means that democracy can thrive only when we are alert and wide awake to our responsibilities as citizens in the first place and as professional journalists. You must have heard that recently Google signed a deal with around 30 publishers in India. What is the deal about? The deal was about sharing revenues, advertising revenues, which are plenty on Google, on the different Google channels, and thus help newspapers in India to do a better job, get some revenue, and use that revenue from Google for investigative journalism, for example, or for employing more full-time and part-time journalists. Okay. I think this is an extremely good development. Earlier, Google took news, snippets of news from the newspapers of the world, not only Indian newspapers of the world, yeah, and was not paying a penny to any of these papers. And then states like Australia and Germany and France and UK, they began to make demands on Google. Google was using their news material, news content, without paying anything in return. And news gathering is a very expensive business. You need reporters, you need sub-editors, you need editors, assistant editors, and so on. It's a whole big team that is involved in putting news together, whether offline or online. Now, of course, most of the offline papers are available easily on the internet. However, some of them have set up paywalls. Take, for example, the Hindu or the Indian Express and some other papers, they have put up, the Business Standard, they put up paywalls so you can get access maybe just to the headlines and to the intros of their stories. And of course, very little access to the editorials and feature articles. This move to support the newspapers of the world, and on YouTube, the effort even to support those who upload their music videos and their films and their talks and so on. There's a system on YouTube called Patreon, Patreon, where Google pays you for the material you upload, whatever, with text, speech, music, films, documentaries, and if you happen to gather a good number of viewers, then YouTube makes you an offer to set up a Patreon account. And through this account, YouTube helps many musicians, many speakers, many filmmakers, and so on, to make a little money every month. So these are two ways in which the online world, especially Google in this case, and Google, for YouTube also belongs to Google. I'm sure Facebook and other social media will also follow suit. This support from the online world for offline world, so-called legacy media, I think this is a good move, and it will help the media and industry tremendously. Yeah. Yeah, let me move on then. Let me move on to the second issue I want to dwell on, and that is the kind of professional skills required for journalism and mass communication. In other words, for the media business. One, perhaps the most important skill is content writing. I'm afraid in our mass communication classes, we don't give much importance to the skill of writing. Writing for the press, writing for film, script writing, writing for radio, and writing fiction or poetry for that matter. This is, I think, a primary skill required for all students of journalism and mass communication. You may be good as a cinematographer, you may be good as a director and a producer, or an actor for that matter, but I think you need to develop at least some skill in writing for the mass media, writing for the mass audience, not writing for yourself, not writing for academics or for your teachers, but writing for a mass audience, because that is how mass media work. They cannot develop or make any progress or improve their ways if you do not support them in this way through excellent writing skills, whether in Hindi, Marathi, English. Learn to write for different genres and in different styles. Because each genre, say for example, soap opera or the news, require very, very different skills. And some of you already are postgraduates know that reporting is very different from subbing. Both require writing skills. Both require writing that reports accurately, without, as far as possible, without bias. Yeah. But in journalism and mass communication, I think some distinctions must be made between what is news and what is paid news, what is PR and what is advertising, what is propaganda, what is fake news. I think these distinctions have to be understood very clearly, so that you don't unnecessarily sensationalize the news. Now, what is the distinction between news and paid news? News is written and published by professional journalists, at least in the traditional sense. Now, of course, anyone can be a journalist. You can upload your report on news channels or news aggregators. So there are so many of them, like samachar.com and so on and so forth. The Wire, Scroll, the Print, the Quint, a whole lot of them would require professional journalists, but also those who want to write freelance. Paid news is an advertising strategy, it's a PR strategy. It's not news at all. It has no credibility. And that is not, I wouldn't regard that as journalism at all. What are called advertorials. Advertorials are not a form of journalism, are a form of paid news. Yeah. I move on then to another skill, visualizing and a sense of design. This is absolutely crucial because as a reporter, sometimes especially in small news organizations, sometimes you're called upon to even lay out the paper, to write the headlines, to make, as I say, to make up the paper. So I would say, while you might specialize, and specializing is required, while you might specialize in reporting or subbing, but don't overlook the other aspects or the other branches of journalism, like feature writing, like telling maybe fiction. Fiction is, there are quite a few publications which publish fiction, at least short stories, regularly. Some of them even publish poems. Yeah. Creativity. All of us are creative, whether we are writers or painters or artists, we're all creative. But for the mass media, I think a special kind of creativity is required, where you are able to be original, where you're able to tell a story in an interesting, dramatic way, and gather audiences, the attention of the audiences in a regular way. Yeah. Finally, I want to move on to professional values and ethical values. Now, what are the professional values required, say, in journalism and mass communication? In journalism, I would say the key value, professional value, is impartiality. I know this is very difficult to be very impartial, not to keep your biases and feelings out of the picture in a report or in a news story. But I think this value is absolutely crucial for a high standard of journalism. I'm talking mainly here about reporting. As they say in journalism, facts are sacred, opinion is free. Facts are sacred, opinion is free. So as a reporter and as a sub-editor, if you're dealing with news stories, news events, as far as possible, you have to give both sides of the picture. As far as possible. I know sometimes it's not absolutely possible to keep these two apart, but as far as possible, and your writing style and the kind of the way you structure a news story will tell the reader whether you are biased or not in your report. So aim for impartiality. Those who write for the new media might wonder, what are these values about? They don't concern us at all. This is not true. Journalism through the ages, right from 1780 in India, when Augustus Hickey brought out the first newspaper, certain values make or break a newspaper. And this, of course, leads us to questions of balance, where both sides, different political parties are represented. Okay. And you, as a reporter or sub-editor, don't take sides. Neutrality, all interrelated values. Okay. Yeah. And finally, ethical values. This is a great responsibility. People look up to journalists to tell us the facts, to give us the story, the facts of a story, not to bluff, not to mislead us or misinform us. And readers are smart enough to see through such reporting. We often think that audiences and readers of newspapers are very passive. Not at all. They are very active, intelligent, discriminating readers. They can recognize fake news, propaganda for what it really is. I think one of the great ethical values needed for a journalist is respect for people's privacy. There's a lot of talk going on about privacy, how our privacy is totally invaded by the online media. They gather our data and use that data to target ads at us. But I would say that in the next maybe 5-10 years, this scenario will change. More and more websites, platforms like Google are realizing that those who surf the web don't want their privacy invaded. They don't want their personal data gathered. And already they're talking about a cookie-less platform, a cookie-less, which means cookies gather your personal data, your surfing data, all your activities on the net, recorded by cookies. Very interesting word. It sounds so innocent, and yet it is so dangerous. So respect for other people, for privacy. Of course, there are laws against reporting which invades privacy. Laws against, for example, libel, defamation. Yeah? You can be taken to court. Yeah? And you know that several journalists have been taken to court and have had to pay for it. Yeah. Another issue is the question of gifts. When you go to a press conference as a reporter or as an assistant editor or senior editor, you will invariably get some gifts. Now, the corporate world knows how to play on your mind, to play on your weakness, as it were. So small little trifling gifts like pens, books, notebooks, and so on are okay. They're not unethical. But big gifts, like giving you stocks, giving you shares in a company, I think that is going too far. That I think SEBI will look after. Yeah. And finally, keeping the confidence of your sources. You as a reporter, or even as assistant editor, will have your sources for information. Sources in the police, in government, in political parties, those sources have to be kept confidential. This is a key principle, a key value in journalism, keeping your sources confidential. I'll move on quickly because we have little time left. And of course, I'll add one more professional value, and that is the right to reply. Readers have the right to reply. And this is almost like a constitutional right. So if you defame a person's reputation, say a doctor, a practicing doctor, whose name you ruin by fake news, by rumors, the doctor can take you to court or take you to the Press Council of India. And the Press Council of India is kind of a pseudo court, though it has no right to penalize. It is a statutory body set up by Parliament, and it is perhaps one of the best functioning statutory regulatory bodies in India. So you can be ordered, your paper can be ordered to publish a reply from the doctor you have criticized. So very important, very central principle in journalism is accepting the right of the reader to reply. Okay. And often the Press Council says, this reply must be published on the front page, because the article defaming him also appeared on the front page. So this is how journalism works, so that it on a daily basis upholds its responsibility as a watchdog of a democracy. It's not an easy task. Journalists have often been killed. In Afghanistan, 72 journalists were killed. What were they doing? They weren't doing their job. They were killed. And of course, you know, in India, how many journalists have been killed, have been arrested, I would say wrongly, because all that they were doing was their job as a responsible citizen, as a responsible journalist. Finally, let me move on to the third issue I wanted to raise, and that is how to study. Some few 4 or 5 tips on how to study this very special and yet demanding subject called journalism and mass communication. In the first place, you have to remember that this subject or discipline or branch of knowledge, if you like, is interdisciplinary. It needs the social sciences, especially where theory and research is talked about. It needs the social sciences, especially, I would say, sociology, psychology, anthropology, and then, of course, humanities, literature, history, and politics, but also social science, more than humanity, and so on. All of these different disciplines help the researcher in journalism and mass communication to get his or her principles, theories, and research methods. Okay? We have not, in our discipline, we have not really developed our own research methods, our own theories. Except there are maybe a few rare cases, but otherwise, for our roots, as it were, our roots are in the social sciences and the humanities. So, what does this mean for you? It means that you must read across disciplines. Don't just restrict yourself to reading about mass media, journalism, and so on. Okay? Read across disciplines. Read books on Indian sociology. Okay? our society is very unique, especially with the caste system, okay? And the gender question. Still, we are lagging behind in terms of equality and justice for our women and for our marginalized groups. Secondly, keep up to date. How do you do that? You see, our subject is evolving every day. Yeah. Technology is evolving. Though our values and principles remain the same in journalism and mass communication, after all, what are we doing? We're telling stories. We're telling stories, interesting, dramatic stories, whether factual stories like news and information, documentaries, but also we're spinning fictional stories. Yeah. We often construct the news that we peddle. One has to be aware of that. Of course, there's a history of how a news report is constructed socially and culturally and professionally. So keep up to date by reading journals like this. I would recommend this very strongly. For English readers, I would recommend this Frontline from Chennai. It publishes the Hindu. One of course, it is leftist in its politics, but I would say in terms of accurate reporting, writing style, you can learn a lot from this publication. Okay? It is priced quite high, 125 rupees. But remember, when you have a high cover price, then there are fewer ads in the magazine or in the paper, and you find very few ads in Frontline, and that is why it's priced so high, 125 rupees. You take a publication from Delhi, so this is from Chennai, another publication from Delhi, the Caravan. Caravan is about 150 rupees, but if you flip through the pages, you'll find hardly any ads. And Caravan is known for one special kind of journalism. It's called long-form journalism. Long-form journalism. In other words, they take up a story, a subject, and discuss it in 12, 13, 15 pages. Long-form journalism, which is, I would say, mostly analytical, investigative. Okay. Of course, there are papers like Bhaskar and Jagran, other papers, Maharashtra Times, Sakal, and a whole lot of others. Lok Satta, which are also papers with high credibility. What makes a paper credible and trustworthy? Its serious approach to journalism, keeping in mind professional values, ethical values. You can't get away from them. Then, when you read newspapers, magazines, books, journals, read between the lines. Be skeptical. Ask questions. Don't just absorb, accept easily what is dished out to you in many of the media, offline and online, because there's a lot of hate speech. There's a lot of attempts to polarize our people, our various communities. There are mischief makers who attempt to ruin our enjoyment of the media. We give so much of time and our attention and our data now to the media, and we don't expect anyone to butt in and misinform us and mislead us. So one has to be skeptical, I would say. Be, in other words, critical. It's one of the most required qualities of a student of the media is being critical. Data analysis. We are loaded with data offline and online. Lots of data, graphs, charts, tables, etc., etc. We should be very discerning in our interpretation of those tables and charts and graphs. What do I mean by that? Ask questions. What is a sample? Sample size. Is it representative? Is it truly representative? Who has sponsored this research? What is the source of these tables? And you often find the sources are the corporate world themselves. Take, for example, the recent survey by Ormox Media on OTT, on the audience in India for OTT. What was the sample? And they told us there are 353 regular viewers of OTT, 353 million. And then a whole lot of charts and tables telling us about what these audiences watch, where they are, from which metropolis, and so on and so forth. Okay, but look at the sample. It's a national survey, and the sample is just 12,000. So you have to ask questions about these surveys that appear regularly on our electronic media, on the print media, and the digital media as well. Ask questions about data. Don't take data lying down, as it were. Okay, because there is a lot behind the data which you should question and challenge. That would make you a good journalist, a good mass communicator, and also will increase your critical skills. Yeah, maybe finally. So be sensitive to hate speech. Be careful about using terms. Be sensitive to language, especially terms, loaded terms like terrorist, anti-nationalist, Maoist, Marxist, leftist, and so on and so forth. Be wary, be cautious about using these terms and believing the ideology and the politics behind these terms. Finally, in your preparation to be professional journalists, mass communicators, be understanding, be empathetic to your readers. Take them into account always. Readers will love you, will trust you if you love and respect them. And finally, I would say, don't rush to conclusions, like our channels do throughout the day and night, breaking news. They rush to conclusions, and then they realize that they have been wrong. And in the recent reporting from Afghanistan, you found that one says the blast, there are two blasts, then there's a blast from Al-Qaeda, and so on and so forth. They have all been taken for a ride. So it's better to be late than to be wrong in breaking the story. I think I would conclude these words. I wish all of you the best in your studies, and it has been a pleasure interacting with you. And if you want to know more about the kind of work that I do, of course, I teach now at MICA. I teach only doctoral students. It's quite a while since I taught undergraduate and postgraduate students. So let me introduce you to This is what I've been doing for the last 40 years. This is a book. We have seen this. We have seen earlier editions. This is the fifth edition of my book, Mass Communication in India. Okay. And there's a Hindi version as well for those who want to read in Hindi. Bharat Mein Jan Sanchar. This was published about 3 years ago. Okay. So both these books have been very helpful to students in their studies, in their examinations, and also your teachers' tests and so on and so forth. So I will stop here for questions. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone has any questions? Raise your hands or put in the chat box if anyone has any questions.
Yes, chat box, yeah. Thank you very much, Kunal Modak. Yeah. But I'm waiting for good, intelligent questions from you.
Anyone?
It looks like the students don't have any questions. What are the teachers?
Just a second.
Yeah.
There's one question, sir. In this times, like COVID times, what do you think how the students need to prepare themselves for the field out there?
Yeah, very good question. They're not ordinary times, they're extraordinary times, and I've been teaching my doctoral students for all this time for the last year and a half online, and it has not been a very pleasant experience, primarily because our students don't get access to books, to library, and I'm not sure if much learning takes place. I hope some learning takes place, but I'm not sure, because see, first of all, you do not know whether the students may be on Zoom, but they could be doing other things, not necessarily paying attention to your session. And I would say that, yeah, since we don't have access to library, since we don't have access to other students, and no access to teachers altogether except through Zoom, what I would suggest is use YouTube, use Wikipedia, use TED Talks. Lord, ample, I think never before in the history of knowledge have we had such free access to the knowledge of the world, to the top professors in Harvard and so on and so forth. I spent a lot of time watching talks and lectures on YouTube. And fortunately, many universities in the United States and also in Europe, they give you free access to lectures, to doctoral thesis, to master's thesis. You just have to search for the university's name and look for research papers or research dissertations, and you will get access to them online, of course. And then there's, of course, Shodh Ganga. For those who are doing masters or PhD, Shodh Ganga provides you free access to the dissertations published around the country in different subjects. I found that a remarkable source. So Shodh Ganga, Wikipedia definitely is much more reliable than going than searching other sites, because Wikipedia doesn't collect your data incidentally. It's a public service. This is what I mean by a public good, a public resource, and a public service. Wikipedia is a good example. TED Talks, a good example. Okay. I've learned so much. I've learned so much from TED Talk, and of course, films from all over the world on YouTube. And now, of course, you get access to hundreds of films on Netflix and Amazon Prime and so on. See, so make good, during these COVID times, make good use of the internet to access some of the top lectures from professors from around the world. That is what I would suggest.
So there's another question from
Yes.
student. She is asking how to sense professionalism from the very earlier stages in the field.
Once again,
How to sense professionalism from very early stages in the field. Like, how do you get the sense of
yes.
professionalism?
So learn from the best. So go to YouTube, search for P. Sainath, P full stop Sainath, Sarnath.
Right.
And other journalists. There are good discussions on professional journalism. There are good critiques of journalism, but also good tips on how to do journalism professionally.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a pity that we don't have access now to libraries, and especially, of course, not so much for undergraduate and postgraduate, but definitely for doctoral students like mine. They're finding it very, very hard. Because there are a lot of books which are not available online. And of course, if you want to learn the history of Indian cinema, there's no better source than YouTube, right? Starting from Raja Harishchandra, Dada Saheb Phalke's film, even going earlier to the first film made by the Media brothers. The first films, like Arrival of a train at the station, workers emerging from a factory, and so on and so forth. So in my class, I use YouTube a lot. And I find that this makes classes very interesting, livens up the classes, and also it leads to a lot of discussion. Recently, I showed the Japanese film, Kurosawa's film, Rashomon, to my doctoral students, to drive home the point that we all tell lies, at least sometimes, to protect our own skins, to protect our own name and reputation.
Yeah.
So I think I would encourage even teachers to use the online media. You're so lucky. See, when I first began teaching, we didn't have anything. I had to get a copy, say, from Films Division or from the director themselves, and then set up a huge projector in the classroom. I mean, it was ridiculous. I come to think of it now, but there was no other way of doing it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
One more question, sir.
Yes.
Same person, Rasika, she's asking if they are working in the earlier stages, like right in the graduation, how should their approach be towards internships and studies together?
This is a question about working in very early stages after graduation. How should we approach with internship and working here? Yes, I would encourage all of you to do some internship, at least I know in Hon'ble Institute, where I used to teach for 13 years, I taught there. We used to send our students every year for 3 months for internship. I think it's very crucial. So if you're specializing in print journalism, please go to some local paper and learn as much as possible. Of course, they will exploit you. They will not pay you, but that doesn't matter. what is important that you learn from senior journalists. If you're lucky, you might get into a good newspaper publishing house where journalists are serious about training juniors. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I like that. That is a good question. Internship. It is always a problem at Ranade Institute. Of course, sometimes the students would manage on their own. And at that time, say in the 1990s, there was only Ranade Institute. You see, but now I think Pune, there are at least half a dozen communication and journalism institutes, and they all now compete for internships in the local papers. I think you should move to Bombay or elsewhere because I think there are good opportunities for you. Yeah, you're getting into a good profession, a good field. You will certainly enjoy yourself. It's hard work. You have to have good stamina, strong legs. You have to work at odd hours, night shift, for example. But I think it is worth the effort. And I must tell you honestly, whenever the students came back from their internship, they were full of joy. You see, they just wanted to talk about their wonderful experiences. Okay? And they said, "Sir, this is the best 3 months of the course at Ranade." So I would encourage all of you to do some kind of internship, either with a film making house. Of course, now everything is at a standstill. You can't move around very much. You have to keep social distancing. But I think hopefully things will get better in a couple of months' time, and then we will all see you in the physical classroom, and then we can shake hands and hug each other.
Yes.
Yeah. I wish you all the very best, and thank you, Debahuti, for inviting me. Thank you, Keshav, and all the professors. It has been a real delight spending this 1 hour with you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm
You're
sure
welcome.
students have gained so much from this very interactive and explanatory and extensive lecture. And I wish that you will be present here offline someday and guide our students more.
I would love to come to
Yes.
PMV and address the students in a physical classroom.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that day.
Yes. I hope the students are too, and all of the faculty here at Journalism and Mass Comm department. We also will be glad if you come here. Okay. So
Bye.
thank you everyone once again. Thank you students for joining as well. We'll see you tomorrow for your next session.
Shall I
Yes.
leave the room? Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All the best.
Good day, everyone.